the Soul's Conquest. Yay. Awesome. So tell us a bit about your craft. Like, you have hosted a lot of things. I know you shared this in your introduction. How did that journey start?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
This is a podcast where I want you to dive as deep as possible. So go crazy. No
You
time.
got it. It's so fun about something like this is it's so rare that you, the general you as a creative, get to share the whole story. So thanks for the opportunity. I won't make it too detailed though, because you can always dive in more if there's something that jumps out at you. But essentially it started when I was really little. I just was watching Sound of Music, Annie, Bye Bye Birdie, all those movies on repeat. And of course, all the Disney ones like Beauty and the Beast were just coming out when I was little. So just on repeat, my poor parents had to listen to it over and over and over again. When we were in the car, the cassette tapes over and over and over again. And so I was constantly singing and dancing from a very early age. And then I got into gymnastics. And skip ahead to when I was 7, there was a community theater by where my family grew up, where I grew up in New Jersey, called Skit. And my mom said, you love all of these shows. We had been going to see some of their shows. They're doing a summer workshop. Would you like to be in it? And I said, no. I was so shy, which nobody seems to believe now.
Yeah.
So she's like, okay. So we kept going to their shows. And the next year I was 8 and she's like, they're doing their summer workshop again. Would you like to do it? And I said, okay, I'll do it. And that was it. I mean, from there, it just became full on immersed in musical theater for me. And I started taking dance in about 4th grade. And then, voice lessons by the time I was in high school. And it just became 2 to 3 shows a year. And all of my best friends were there in that theater community. And it was just such a beautiful group of people. And from, I'll tell anyone I can the importance of putting a child into something like theater. You don't have to do it as a career, but just from the standpoint of how it builds confidence, how it builds time management skills, how it helps to teach someone how to present themselves, how to show up, how to give 100% even when you're tired or things aren't going your way. So those skills, also became this wonderful side, I don't know if you can call it a side benefit or full benefit of being a part of theater for so many years. So skip ahead, I graduated high school and I didn't want to do a musical theater major because I wanted that more well-rounded type of a degree in college. And I went to Butler University, which was in Indianapolis, Indiana. If you're not in America, that's pretty much the middle of the country out there. And it was a wonderful school. It definitely was not focused in musical theater at all, which was too bad because I definitely knew that was going to be my main focus. But at the same time, there was so much from Butler that I could have never found, otherwise. So it was an amazing opportunity, even if it wasn't as performing focused as I would have liked. I was an arts administration major with a vocal music minor. So basically that meant a nonprofit administration type of degree. It was kind of like getting your business courses, your music courses, and all with a nonprofit focus. So that was great. And I was involved in so much there at Butler. And thankfully, the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra was right down the road, and they did some shows where they involved performers. And I ended up getting to perform with them for my first professional jobs. And that was thrilling, absolutely thrilling. And, on Butler's campus, I was a part of various organizations. I worked with the Dean of Student Life for some organizations, the honors program. I studied abroad in Ireland for a semester. I did an internship here in New York City for a semester. So it gave me a lot of great opportunities. And then right after Butler, to New York City and started auditioning. And then along with that, I need to mention that I became a certified fitness professional while I was at Butler. Started teaching on campus. When I did my internship in New York City, I ended up finding a job with a corporate fitness company here. And that ended up helping me to pay my bills more. And then that was able to then come back when I moved here, and I was able to still work with them. And then everything grew from there on the fitness side, which all helped me as a performer then as well.
Wow. That was such a brilliant journey, which I have a couple of questions from. Um, what was your favorite musical theater or show when you were a little kid?
Oh, Annie was probably my favorite one when I was little. And then I got to be in it when I was 13. But what was funny was leading up to that, the theater started to do traveling shows where we would do different events, and it wouldn't be an entire musical. We do a bunch of songs from different musicals. So I became their Annie, and I got to do the Annie songs like with the dog in different places. And oh my gosh, it was like a dream come true. But then by the time the theater actually did Annie the musical, the person who's playing Daddy Warbucks was only 5'2", I think. And by that point, I was 5'3". So they said, "You're too tall to be Annie." And and it was just like, oh my gosh, how? But what ended up working out in that show was I was one of the orphans, and I became the orphan dance captain. So what that means for someone who's not in theater, a dance captain is the person that helps the choreographer keep the choreography fresh, sharp, rehearses it when the choreographer is either not there or working with another group. So I was in charge, so to speak, of 20 some orphans, quote unquote orphans, of all, kids ages 7 to 14, I guess. And I drilled them in these dance numbers, and it ended up I became a dance captain for all the shows after, and even some professionally here in New York. So it's funny how that random thing that I was too tall to play Annie ended up working out in a different way.
Wow. Definitely, I would love to see some photos or videos if you have anything, do share it, because
Okay.
such a cool montage to have on Instagram when I'm promoting you. Just to, because I feel like a lot of people need to see the on the screen and behind the scenes kind of view of what happens. And since you have played both Annie and then been a dance captain, if you have any videos, I think that would be so, so amazing to see that.
Okay.
Yes, and my next question is, what is your favorite musical theater or show right now in the present?
I'm the worst at picking favorites of anything in life. I can never pick one.
Current favorite, current
So
favorite. So, it can change by the time this podcast comes out, and no
there you go.
one will hold you to it.
But I will just give you one example then. Okay, maybe I'll give you two because they're very different. One is Jersey Boys, which
Mhm.
I absolutely love that show. In short, I had auditioned for it for years, and then there's three casts in the New York. There's the New York company, there's the main tour, and then there's a ship tour, so to speak, the ship production. And those are the three that are from the the top, the Dodgers theatricals and the original Broadway choreography and all of that. And I ended up getting to do the ship version right before the pandemic, and it was a dream come true because I absolutely love that show so much. And then on the flip side, very different musical, Sound of Music. It's a
Mm.
dream role to be Maria in Sound of Music. That's definitely, and it's always been a favorite.
Wow, that is wonderful. What is a favorite music or theater that you have been a part of?
Definitely Jersey Boys. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely that. Um, but there's so many that have been wonderful for many ways. Jersey Boys takes the cake by just being the one that I had been, dreaming about for so long.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd go back into that show in a heartbeat. But I mean, there's so many. One of them that just is popping to mind right now. I was in Smokey Joe's Cafe, which, if you're not familiar with that show, it's a bunch of songs by Lieber and Stoller. It's songs like "Teach Me How to Shimmy." It's on Broadway. It's all of those like 1960 songs, and that was so much fun. And I got to work with the most amazing director and music director combo, and that was just up in New York here. So yeah, I could go on, but there's a couple.
Wow. So let's pick up Jersey Boys. So when you were a part of that, how did that feel for you? What was that experience like for you? If you don't mind sharing.
Um, no, of course. Well, the outside of it being on a ship was definitely not something that I would like to go back to. That was not the best, but the show itself and the cast, that was amazing. And I mean, that was such a blessing because you're stuck, so to speak, with these people the whole time you're on a contract, and so you're not always as lucky as I was to be with such an amazing group.
Mm.
And I absolutely loved being with this group, and so that was a blessing. And the show just felt like, oh, I after so long of, you know, in performing, we spend so much of our time hearing no.
Mm.
So to finally hear yes from a show that I respected so much, respected the creative team so much, had seen so many times on Broadway, and just to get to say, oh, wow, I accomplished this. I talked about this being in the show 8 years ago, and it's happening. Like that just, yeah, it felt amazing.
Wow. Wow. Seriously, I feel like wow is going to be the word of this podcast where people listen to it and make a drinking game out of it because I'm just like so excited. I want to ask you this. You said that you waited almost 8 years, if that is the right amount of time, to be a part of Jersey Boys. Do you feel like this is something that you had to do, or that people who are starting out right now will have to experience a lot in their journey, where they'll have to wait for a pretty long time to be a part of a show that they genuinely love? What is that waiting process like, and what was that moment for you when you finally heard that yes from for being a part of the show? So yeah.
Okay. Uh, well, it's funny. I definitely remember the moment I got it by email, and
Yeah.
it was just one of those you had to like read it a couple times to like, wait,
Mm.
this is real. But back up to, do I feel like a lot of people in this, especially like a performing field, has to wait a long time? Yes. And not just performing, but visual arts, fine arts, all of that too. Granted, there are some people that do something at the age of 17, it gets seen by people, it's outstanding, they get picked up by an agent, and they're working ever since. That happens, but it's even less likely than I even thought when I was 18. You know what I mean? When I was still even more like idealistic about it all. Like, oh, I won't have to wait that long. By 22, I'll be on Broadway. It'll be great. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way most of the time. And things have shifted a lot since I've graduated and moved to New York in the Broadway world with, I mean, to keep it in short, the it's a very oversaturated market. I came to New York right after the recession in '08. So that shifted a lot of things, less jobs, more people coming into the industry. And now there's so many college programs for musical theater. So there's even more kids coming to the city for the jobs. So it's very oversaturated. It's a challenge. There's a lot with union versus non-union work and et cetera, et cetera. But somebody said this at a workshop when I was about 15 years old, and I've never forgotten it. And I've heard it in various ways ever since, but it's, if you can do anything else in like any other career, do it. But if you need to do this, then you have to do it. And that's how I feel about performing. There's a lot of things I love, but performing is, there's a fire inside me that comes with it, being, whether it's on stage or on camera, scripted or unscripted. I love that medium for expression. I love making people feel better. So I've known that I've needed to do it. I'd regret it if I didn't. But at the same time, I think you really need to think long and hard before diving into it. That said, you can dive into it and change careers. I have friends now who are changing careers. I have friends who are, in their 40s changing careers. It's anytime. You're never too old to leave it or to come back to it. But it's definitely something that is not as easy, quote unquote, as people think from what they see in TV shows and movies, where it's like, oh, I went into an audition and I got into the final callbacks and there's only 2 of us and then I booked it. And next week I'm, walking the red carpet. Like, not quite.
Yeah. So would this be a good suggestion to have like a backup plan while you are working towards the dream of being in a production? Would that be something that would be a good suggestion, or would that be like deviating too much and being like, "Ugh," I don't know. What is your thoughts on that?
So it depends on the person, right? I feel like that's every parent's comment is, what's the backup plan? But I've always really despised that. And it
I've
has nothing
cringed
to
you.
do, yeah, it has nothing to do with the person saying it. Like, it's a very valid
Hmm.
thought. It's any rational thinker's thought, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're going into something that is so risky. What's the alternative plan? And but it's also how you frame it, right? Like, I have an entire other career that works in tandem with my performing world, and that's the fitness side. And some people look at that and call my fitness side a backup plan. I don't see it like that. I have multiple passions, and these are both fields I'm really, really passionate about. And I'm so grateful to have been able to pursue both of them this
Yeah.
whole time. Other people, I know that there are struggles out there with, you get that side job just to get money. You hate your side job. You go to it every day just so that you can, pay your bills, but you despise it and you long for the auditions and everything like that. And some, great advice that floats around, and I'd say it too, is just the idea of you need your whole self to be happy, to find contentment somehow, to find joy somewhere, right? It goes back to mental health, physical health, spiritual health. It all folds in upon one another. And something like that is important. You don't have to have your passion, your side job, be a passion, but to get something that pays your bills so that you can focus on your performing career, to be able to find something that you enjoy. You don't have to love it. You don't have to like I love fitness. That's okay. But to find something that's at least enjoyable for you to do to supplement your performing, it doesn't have to be a backup plan. It can just be, what else can I find that I find enjoyment in that maybe can help pay the bills so that I can then focus on performing, that sort of a thing.
Yeah.
That said, I do find it very beneficial if you major in something that's not musical theater. I will say that, some people would say no to that, but I personally feel like, get a major in something that is more applicable to multiple industries.
Yeah.
Granted, as long as you have a degree, you can find a job somewhere. But it is helpful if you get, a general business degree, because performing is a business. And a lot of times people come to New York and all they know is how to sing and dance. I'm overgeneralizing.
Yeah.
Everybody knows a lot more than how to just sing and dance, but you're just saying, like, career wise, whereas it's so much about how do you manage your time? How do you manage your money? You know, what's an investment? How do we get a savings account while pursuing this career that doesn't pay a lot usually, if it pays at all? So that's something very important, that I'd say to anybody looking to get into this field too, is go to college, get your degree in something, get business classes if you can, and then attack your dream. Yeah, don't shy away from it just because it's risky.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I definitely love that. I'm gonna backtrack a bit and ask you why, when you were a little kid, you said that you used to love listening and watching theaters and musical shows and stuff like Beauty and the Beast and stuff like that. Why did you watch that? Like, what did that make you feel when you started that journey? And how did that kind of that emotion as a kid, how did that turn into you wanting to start your journey into the musical theater world?
That's a great question that I I don't even know if I know an exact answer for it, because as far back as I can remember, those movies are in my brain and my memory, and those songs are in my memory. So was it that mom put Sound of Music on in the VHS one day and I just happened to be drawn towards it? Probably. And I guess that's the way it works, right? With a lot of people finding what they love, like uh oh my gosh, I just thought of examples and they all went out of my brain. I mean, think of a little, I know a 5-year-old who loves kindergarten right now.
Mm.
And when I saw him recently, he wanted to teach. Like he wanted to be the teacher for all of us adults sitting there. I thought, wow, what an example of a child who might grow up to want to be a teacher. Like maybe he won't, but
Yeah.
it's just like why do we get drawn to certain things? I have no idea. Why does a child love soccer and lives and breathes soccer or football, or
Yeah.
basketball? I don't know. It just, we
Yeah.
just get pulled to, and I'm just so grateful that I have passions and I had the support in my passions that made me realize that it was something that I could pursue and do. But how they make me feel, I mean, I just always remember joy and happiness, and I know that I'm very, very lucky to have that in my childhood of
Mm.
just remembering joy and happiness. But I mean, I even remember like when I'd go to friends' houses, just cartwheeling through their family room, and I remember like tap dancing in the grocery store with mom, and like as I go down the aisles. So I don't know, it just became such a part of me, and it brought me so much joy. And did that kind of answer your question?
It does, it does. And I love
Okay.
that because, I love that answer a lot, mostly because of the fact that, like you said, stuff like this happens in the passing. Like, no one's really looking for these moments of ahas and epiphanies. It happens in the passing, it catches your eye, and suddenly, like, you live and breathe this one thing that you never even thought would happen. And it can happen at any moment in your life. It can happen when you're like 5 years old, and it can
Yeah.
happen when you're 70. So
Yeah.
I love that a lot. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks. And it is, sometimes it's like, oh boy, would it have been easier if I had been pushed to do something different?
Mm.
Maybe, but would I have been able to, touch so many lives in positive ways? Like maybe not. Would I have been as happy? Like maybe not. Would I be regretting picking a different path? Probably. So there's always going to be unknowns in life. So that's why you might as well follow what you're most passionate about and see where it goes.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I'm gonna ask you this question, which is like a very generalized question, but I want to get your thoughts on it. So let's say you are working on a project right now. What do you hope to achieve? Like, you just answered a bit of this, like you have touched so many lives with the work that you do. So what would be some other things that you hope to achieve when you are working on a creative project, or when you're working in a musical theater project or something along those lines?
Mhm. That's I think about that a lot because I'm always about like, what's the purpose? What's my purpose? What's the purpose of what I'm doing? And I always come back to that making people feel better. And I find that in the fitness career, I find that in performing, I find it with Be the Good podcast. It's how can I make people feel better? How can I make the world a better place in just one tiny step of the way, or
Mm.
inch forward? So in a creative project, it's how can I make people feel, right? Sometimes it's feel, period, because sometimes it's make them feel concerned about an issue. Sometimes it's make them feel frustrated about something that's happening because it opens their eyes to something that maybe then they can do. Like think about a movie that really impacted you. It's not necessarily the happiest movie. Sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's anger inducing, but it affected you, and then hopefully it brought you to some sort of action, right? To saying, oh, I have the power to help work against this or to make the world a better place. So that's what I keep coming back to, is how to make people usually feel better, but to help, if not feel better in the moment, to feel inspired to take action. And I think about that too, in terms of like, if I could paint a picture of like what kind of show would I want to be on, I can't just pick one, but one of them would be, I love the Hallmark movies.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I know, yeah, and a lot of people are like, oh, tongue in cheek, like, oh, they're just too cutesy. But no, I love it because they're there to make you feel better, and they're there
Yes.
to fill your heart. And in a world with so much negativity, sometimes that is exactly what we need. So if I could just wake up and go to set each day of a Hallmark movie and know that I am making people happier, I'd be very happy in that.
I love that answer a lot because, like, as Christmas rolls in, we have like this list of Hallmark movies that we watch. And, like you said, like, sometimes you kind of need to switch off your brain and just be in that moment of feeling these emotions. And, like, we are so used to watching cynical stuff where we have to, like, put on our thinking hats and think about how this is affecting the world, which is good. I'm not saying that it is bad. Like, I enjoy those kind of movies thoroughly because I like movies which make me want to cry and then think about how this is affecting me. But there are also times where I'm just like, I just want to feel love and be in that zone of heartwarming warmth where I'm, inside a blanket with my family and we are watching this movie and there's our puppies playing around under our feet or something like that. That's the stuff, like that's what Christmas is made of sometimes, I feel. But yeah, definitely relate to that so much. If you are ever in a Hallmark movie, to anyone who ever makes Hallmark movies, if you're seeing this podcast video, get Kate. Oh my god, I would be honored.
Oh my gosh, I would love this. Please put it out there. Put it out there.
Yes, let the world hear this. Definitely awesome. So, my next question to you is this, Kate. You said that you want to make people feel something, feel better, feel inspired. Why is this important to you as a creative?
It's always been a part of my being.
Mm,
I've just always been that kind. I don't know. I'm always thinking about. I don't have a good answer for that. It's just in a part of me. Yeah, I've never really had to think about that. It's just has always come up as what I want to do. I think for a lot of years, people would say, "Oh, are you fake? Do you mean it?" Like, in different things, because I am such a positive person. And
mm.
so, but finally I was like, no, this is just me and it's great. And I accept that there's plenty of negativity, and I read that and I feel that too. And I see that. But if I can help make the world a better place in, 0.001 ounce of a way, I'll do it.
Yes, I love that. I love that you're such a positive person because every time we talk, even if it is just in messages, it's such a joy because I can feel that sunshine and warmth
Oh,
and energy from you. And it's hard to come by these days.
thank you.
Yeah, so
Thank
definitely appreciate you.
you.
You're most welcome. Now, I want to kind of fast track into the future and ask you this. We were talking about how, people face that struggle in this industry in terms of having to wait for a pretty long time before hearing that yes. Do you think with the oncoming of social media, with reels and more creative opportunities, would this be a good platform for someone who's just starting out to kind of create awareness around their being? Because I've seen some amazing creators on Instagram that I follow because of how they perceive a situation, and it's just amazing. But I wanted to get your thought as an experienced person in this industry. Do you think that would be something that people could definitely try out?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's amazing. Like we didn't have this when I started, where you have a free opportunity to show people that you can sing, dance, act, have a brand, have a cause. And for any industry, it's huge. And but it also is overwhelming. So I would say, for as that it's there, and if you feel great using it, use it, go for it. Like it can really help bring awareness to you, your brand, your cause. But at the same time, if that's not you, if you feel overwhelmed by it, don't feel like you have to
Mm.
use it. You don't have to show that you can sing on Instagram. It doesn't all go back to social media. Some people have very successful brands because of social media, but there's plenty of people who are extremely successful without even having a social media account.
Mm.
So it's not the be all and end all. Use it as a tool if it feels good to you. But if it doesn't, there's plenty of other ways to
Yeah.
continue to be you.
Yeah, that is such a beautiful answer, because I feel like oftentimes, especially in our generation, I wouldn't want to like be like this is a very specific thing. I personally feel that as a person, we sometimes get overly attached to something, and it's like this is it. This is going to be my way or my path to success, and it just gets like we put our entire being into that, and if it doesn't succeed, we are just in that state of this just means that I am worthless, like you get into that zone of self hate and self degradation and stuff like that. So what you said, Kate, makes a lot of sense. Like, use it as a tool. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, it happens. You don't necessarily know how it's going to go and where it's going to
Yeah,
go. So yeah,
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
love
And
that.
the algorithms are too complicated to try to figure out. So
I hear you. Oh my gosh, yeah, that is a constant struggle as well. So, but like, yeah, again, use it as a tool, but don't put your entirety, as Kate said, like, don't put your entire being into that. It works, it works. If it doesn't work, there are many, many other ways for you to reach out and show up in the world. Um, my next question to you is this, Kate. What were some of the obstacles that you faced in your journey as a creative in
oh
the
my gosh, obstacles, present and past and future tense is all involved here because like I mentioned at one point, it's a lot of rejection.
Mm,
There's an audition book I had, and that's just me writing down each audition, kind of like what I wore, what I sang, or the scene I did, and how it went. And I would number them, and now I'm forgetting the exact number, but it was some ridiculously high, like 70 something auditions, and then 75 was when I booked the job.
mm,
And that's not an exaggeration. That's just how it works a lot of
yeah.
times, especially if you are a look that has a lot of people who look like you. If you're very unique looking, that can be in your favor or not, depending on the job. If you are a man versus a woman, that there's a lot less men auditioning. But there's a lot of things, there. Maybe they needed somebody who was a stronger singer and you're a stronger dancer, or vice versa. Or there's so much out of your control that goes into an audition, speaking specifically of a performing field. But it can be 70 some auditions before you book one thing, and that one thing might pay $200 a week and last 5 weeks. Or on your fifth audition, you book a Broadway tour and you're making six figures if it's a year-long tour. It's just such a crazy profession that makes no sense. But again, it goes back to, if you have a passion for it, you know that you are in the right spot. Uh, so I think that's the rejection mixed with the unknown, I find to be the two very some of the most challenging aspects of it. Also, from that idea of, in a traditional mindset, you go to school, you do well in school, you get a job, you work up a ladder, and it's like a linear path. And as is a lot of industry now, in our world, it's not linear, and performing is very true. I'll be in an audition room with someone who just came off a Broadway show, and we're in the same pool of people, even though this person was just in a major Broadway show. It's like, why is it? It just is. There's not necessarily you did this wonderful regional house, so now you're going to be in for a Broadway show, so now you're going to go into another Broadway show. It's a zigzag, it's up and down, and such a roller
Mhm.
coaster. So that unknown, and the amount of rejection is definitely there's a lot of positive self-talk to get you through it.
Yeah, and what were some of the solutions that you came up with? And you can speak about this both from a personal and a point of view where you can tell someone who might be going through this right now. So, like, you can speak both from your personal experience as well as what would be some suggestion or advice you'd give to someone who is going through this unknown and this scary, scary world, because it does sound scary as an outsider right now without a clue. Like, I am in love with theater, but that doesn't mean that I have an idea of how it works necessarily behind the scenes again. So, it sounds very overwhelming, and it sounds very in a, you probably might be in a place where you're just like, I put so much work, and when am I going to see that result? So yeah, what would your suggestion be to something like that?
Mhm.
What did you go through? What were your solutions, and what would be your advice?
Two things that immediately came to mind, one being to celebrate all the wins along the
Mm,
way. It's hard, it's easier said than done, because to someone not in the entertainment industry, it's very much like, did you book it? Can I see you win something? Are you on stage now? And those are the easier to see wins, right, from the outside of the industry's view. But in reality, it's, you got a callback for, fill in the blank brand. That's huge.
mm,
That meant that out of the 3,000 submissions for the one line in the, Coca-Cola commercial, you were one of the 6 that were chosen to be in the callbacks. That's a huge win. But if you're not in the entertainment industry, it goes back to, yeah, but you didn't book it. I mean, the amount of times I've heard that line. It's I remember when I got called back for a national tour the first time, it was for Beauty and the Beast. And there were 500 girls, 520 something females between 5'2" and 5'7" in that holding room throughout the day. And I got into the callbacks.
mm,
That's a huge win. In the end, I think there were like 5 people for the track I was up for, and I didn't book it, but I was down to 5 from 500. Oh my gosh, that's a huge win. And those are the really important steps to keep in mind, even if the general public doesn't see it
mm,
quite so much,
yeah.
uh, those are really important wins. And thankfully, things like when you get into the world of agents and casting directors and making connections with them, they appreciate those wins. So it's important to, be proud of those wins too. They'll support you in that. So that's one thing, is celebrating the steps along the way. Even something like great feedback in a class with a major casting director. Amazing. That's huge. The other thing, it was in my brain. And then, see, I was in the present moment. This was good. But now, of course, I forgot the other thing. They're dealing with rejection. That it's usually has nothing to do with you.
Mm,
There some casting director years ago made the comment, and he didn't think of it. It's a comment that comes up a lot. Why didn't you book it? Well, it's because you look like the casting director's ex-wife. Or, it's like sometimes it comes down to something ridiculous like that. Sometimes, yeah, you went flat, so you didn't sing your best. Well, you can't change it. You can just do better in the next one. And I've been there plenty of times. We all have auditions that don't go great at some point, but to remember the rejection when you've done your absolute best probably has nothing to do with you then.
mm,
Maybe it's that, like, I'm a 5'6" brunette. Maybe there was somebody else that's a 5'6" brunette and they needed to change up the look.
mm,
Maybe, maybe they were looking at you for the understudy for the lead, and the lead ended up being a 5'10", very slim dancer girl, and you are not that. Well, then you're probably not going to get the role, because the understudy needs to fit the same like vibe of the person who has the main role. So
mm,
there's so many things. Oh my gosh, it could be that you were in final callbacks for a role in a show that ends up being cut. Like the role didn't even end up going to film. So it's not that you lost the role disappeared, period. So there's just so many. I mean, look at the pandemic. I know people who were ready to make their Broadway debuts, and then the world shut down, and then their show never came to Broadway.
Damn.
So there's just so much out of your control. And to remember that if you do your best, then that's all you can do.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And this thought kind of popped up in my mind, and you can kind of like either agree to it or disagree to it, but it depends. Like, I feel like in a situation like this, mostly because when I'm working with people going through burnouts and stuff like that, I feel like having a support group of people in a similar journey as you, where it's not about competing, it's about like, it's not about like, oh my god, she got the role, so like I suck and like I'm gonna hate her forever and I'm gonna plan revenge and stuff like that. Rather than doing stuff like that, if you are in a space where you are genuinely celebrating each other, looking for advice, I feel like that space would be one of the most beautiful places to be in, especially when you are in a career which is so rocky. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, an
Yeah.
accountability group or something along those lines, or celebration
Oh,
group.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so
Yeah.
glad you said that because that's a really important piece to bring up. Uh, Two big things on that. One being the idea of it. You're right. It's not all competition,
Mm.
and I know that every group you find yourself in is going to be different. If you have one or two people that do see it as a competition, it's going to sour the vibe of the whole room,
Mm.
and that's just how humans and groups and
Yeah.
all of that work.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, when you're in an audition room with a whole bunch of people, you're there chatting, you're talking about things that have nothing to do with the audition. You know that you're up for the same exact role. Maybe even there's only one role. So you're all in there and knowing only one person's going to get it. Rarely over all my years of auditioning have I been in a room like that where no one's talking and they're just like, throwing daggers at each other.
Yeah.
Usually it's, oh, hey, how have you been? I saw that you're doing blah, blah, blah. How's it been going?
Yeah.
That's much more. And even if it's not 100% of the people in the room, you look for those people that are the ones,
Mm.
asking people about how they're doing and with the smiles on their face. Those are the kinds of people you want to associate with, you want to be around, look, there's always good people in there to
Mm.
find that will become your support. I mean, one of my dear friends now, I met her 10 years ago in a class, and we ended up seeing each other, over time in auditions, and now we're really great friends. And it's never about competition in any way, shape, or form.
Mm.
It's just sharing audition experiences, helping each other out, and all of that. And you find those people if you look out for them. Going along with that, though, second thing, there are now support. I It's kind of odd saying support groups, because support groups I feel like sound off usually like a therapy sort of thing, but in a way I guess it is. But artists support communities. Now a lot more people are much more focused on mindset and mental
Mm.
health. Performing, I think, has that kind of reputation for being, you know, no matter what. I mean, what's the quote? You're like, there's no business like show business. Oh my gosh, famous quote about, oh, the show must go on. There it
Yeah.
is.
Ooh,
Right.
yeah.
And it's like, no matter how you feel, you got to do the show. And thankfully there's been a little more movement to say, like, no, if you're sick, stay home. Like, if you need to take a day, take a day. How can we care for ourselves? And part of that is I'm seeing more of the support communities coming up. And actually, in fact, just recently on Be the Good, I was interviewing someone named Shiloh, who began, it's a pod, she calls it, called Collectus.
Mm.
And she gets together and it's like a group session. They go for 12 weeks, and each week they meet on Zoom and they get to share about their experiences, because her whole thing is, creatives are very often solopreneurs
Mm.
and
Ooh,
very
I
much
love this.
alone, right? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
check it out, Collectus. And it's great. And her and her business partner are making strides in letting artists know they're not alone, and there are other solopreneurs who want to connect and build that community. So I think that's awesome that that's happening.
Yeah, I love that. Like, because that reminds me of the mastermind that I'm running as well, and that's the whole vibe of
Yes.
it, that you're
Yes.
not alone in this journey. Like, there are so many people walking the same path as you, and sometimes instead of like looking where the other person's going, it's much more heartwarming and important to hold their hands and walk together on that journey to that success. Because this is something that I had to learn the hard way, that just because someone else is doing the same thing that you're doing doesn't mean that the opportunities decrease. It just means that there is so much more opportunity to create that impact, to let people know that they are important, that they are not alone in this journey. And so, okay, I'm gonna
Exactly. And I'm so glad you're doing mastermind too. And
yeah.
that's the thing, right? It's not just like performing creatives, it's creatives of all types that are doing it. I think it's so much more normal, so to speak, now to not have your, like, I go to an office and I have a 9-to-5 job, so like, where are the support structures in place? Well, you're creating them. Shiloh, I mentioned, creating them. Like, people like you are out there making sure that these things are happening, which is so important.
Definitely important. I'm so glad you mentioned her. I'll definitely check her out. If, in fact, if I can, I'll invite her to the podcast as well. I'll be like, yay. Yeah, love it. So my next question to you is this, Kate. As this is a spiritual podcast, what are some of your favorite self-care routines that you kind of follow, or spiritual routines that you kind of follow in your work life as well as your personal life?
Mhm. I'm a very faith-based person and very focused on, praying, and that is, whether you pray to God or whether you call it, just your meditation or focused thought or a mental check-in. There's a lot of ways to kind of to get this feeling of just taking those couple of minutes to focus in on, saying thanks. For me, it's saying thanks to God for the gifts and asking for help in where I'm supposed to be next with my career, what I'm supposed to do each day to take the right steps, because it's easy to get your focus all over the place. And I keep saying you, it's the general you. I should be saying I, but I know there's plenty of people I know who can relate to this too, right? Of when you're creating your own path, it's, where is my focus today? There's a lot of things pulling at my attention, and okay, what's the next right step right now? And taking the time to say, okay, God, thank you so much for all of this, and specifying things, because then that automatically increases your mood and, makes you feel better about things. And then say, okay, now I really need guidance with this. And if you're not someone who wants to pray to a being, it's okay, what can I do? Just taking the time to mentally check in with yourself is huge and so beneficial. It's actually timely. A priest, and we go to this really welcoming, warm church here in Manhattan. It's just so not your typical, and I love it so much. But he made this comment about a peace check, and I thought, oh, that's so good. We can all do a peace check, and it's just a check in with yourself, where it's like, okay, where am I? Am I at peace right now? If I'm not at peace, what's off? Thinking about that. How can I take steps to be more at peace? I was like, oh, I really love that, because it's just like a little easy check-in with ourselves. So that's really important in self-care to me, is taking inventory on things, saying thank you, asking for guidance, seeing how I can be better to the people around me. I think all of those sorts of mental check-ins are really important too with our relationships, because when we get frustrated in our own lives, it's much easier to lash out at others, or, maybe not to be as warm and compassionate. But I know it's so important to be those things. So to see, okay, what can I do to help the people around me? And that's to also see, how can I help myself? How can I help others? Because if you're not checking in with yourself, then how can you be there for others? And I find that so important. And then from not as spiritual specific to self-care, I really hold exercise, health, nutrition, all of that in very high regard. I mean, obvious, because I'm also in the fitness industry, but more than that, if I retired today from fitness, it would still be at the forefront of my mind, because if we don't take care of our bodies, then we're not going to get much else done, and we're going to be miserable, and we're going to end up injured, and healthcare costs going up, and I mean, the litany goes on, right? So important what we do for our bodies, what we put in our bodies, and sleep, right? How do we take care of ourselves? Are we getting that rest? Because again, we're not resting, we're not functioning as best we can, we're not putting our best foot forward. So
Mhm.
all of those elements, some days more on top of all of them than others. But as long as we're aware of them each day, trying to say, okay, let's check in with everything. How's it all going? What's out of balance? What's in balance? What can we do better? Those are the important check-ins in for me each day.
Wow. Wow, that was so beautiful. Mostly because that is something that I really prefer. Like, if you see my logo, even that shows the fact that, there's a lighthouse. And the concept of that is that there is an inner lighthouse inside of us. So even if you don't want to ask God, sometimes we can't ask God because, I feel like there are times where we are just angry and pissed off. And that happens, right? As humans, when we are in a very difficult place, we're like, oh, why is this happening to me and stuff like that. I feel like at times like that especially, it's very important to know that there is an inner guiding light that's ready to answer the questions that you have. Like, I don't know how to best explain it, but it's like that moment of, like you said, peace check in, ask yourself questions. Where are you at right now? What do you need? What do you feel like? What are you pulled to work at right now? What is this going to do? I feel like doing that, asking those questions is really important, because sometimes, if not all, you are already aware of that answer somewhere deep within. You just need to, like, it's like that moment of revelation. You need to ask the question to get the answer you are looking for. So
That quotable quote that right there. That was really, really good. And I love what you said about that inner lighthouse,
yeah.
because you're so right that there's always a light. And, if you think of it as your soul, or that the God aspect, or whatever you think of it as, it is, because a lighthouse, no matter what the storms are around it, no matter how big the
Right.
waves are, that lighthouse is on and it is shining bright no matter what. So what a
Yeah.
beautiful reminder, right? That no matter how out of sorts everything else feels, we know there's a light in our soul that is shining. We
Yeah.
might have to push the fog away in front of it, but we know it's there and it's
Yeah.
not going away. Oh, I love that, Madhurima. I love that.
Yes. Awesome. I'm glad. Like, I feel like that's the thing that with the brand as well, that's the thing that I want to remind people of, that you don't have to necessarily depend on so many people for the answer. Like, it's good to ask help. I'm not saying that asking help is
Oh,
bad,
yeah.
but it's also important to know that there is someone within you waiting to answer the questions. I get
Yes.
excited.
Yes. Agreed.
Awesome. So I think the next question is kind of like segue into whatever we were just speaking about. I want to ask you next, what was your soul's conquest and what is your current soul's conquest?
Oh boy. Um, what was and what is? I feel like, again, I might not give you the direct answer, but I would say my was and is are not two separate things,
Mm,
right? That it's a constant growing idea, concept, thought, way, depending on how you look at it, right? Of just from childhood till now, and going in the future, it's that constant, like, right, I associate soul's conquest makes me think of your whole being, your whole like purpose, your whole way of life. And so I feel like that's just a constant work in progress and a constant, yes, the growth. So even though, for instance, life might feel like a roller coaster, like especially with performing, right? It's such a roller coaster. There's still a trajectory of growth that's constant. So even if the career feels like it's not always moving forward, like it is in some way, shape, or form, even if it doesn't look like that on paper, because we're always learning, we're always growing. I mean, if we stop learning and growing, what's the purpose? What's the point, right?
yeah.
So I guess, I mean, I don't know if this is the answer you're looking for, but I'd say it's just the ever growing and learning and hopefully changing for the better me,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
how I am in the world, with my relationships, with my faith, with my career, with my dog, right? Everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess
Oh,
so.
I love that. I love that. Really love that. Yeah,
Thanks.
I usually so like whenever I ask this question, I think of it as a side quest that is helping you towards the main thing that you're working for towards your life. But what you answered was so emotionally moving for me. I was just like, wow. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, you asked some deep questions and I appreciate them. It's
Yeah.
like, ooh, it makes me think.
Yeah. Hey, that's I feel like, that asking the deep questions thing is something that has helped me evolve as a coach and as a podcaster. But like I wouldn't have been able to ask the deep questions as a coach if I didn't start asking them as a podcaster, because like that's like such a good opportunity to be in a conversation, be present and listen. Because like, that's where the deep questions come from. It's like by listening to the other person. So yeah,
Yeah.
if any one of you guys are listening in right now, just listen. Like I feel like have conversations as many as possible. That's going to be your biggest gift, I feel.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's something that was interesting about during kind of a little tangent, but with the pandemic, right? Is I
Mm,
feel like there were so many months that we didn't see anyone except our, immediate people in our household, that
yeah.
when I finally did see people, it was like, wait, how do I'm having a conversation again. I'm seeing
Yeah.
your facial expressions, right? Or at least your eyes.
Yeah.
And it's a muscle to be worked,
Yeah.
but just kind of like you said with coaching versus and the podcast and how they've complemented each other, I feel that with personal training, teaching group fitness, and the performing side, especially the unscripted kind
Mm,
of content, is they really do benefit each other. Because something, and it's funny because you might not think, and that's why I think it's so important to take note of these when you're in different industries and
mm,
you're in, or even if you think like school versus quote unquote real life versus, they all do feed one another. And the
yeah.
specific example with fitness is, as a personal trainer and group fitness instructor, I'm constantly thinking on my feet. No matter what plan I have going into the
Mm,
room, it could totally change depending on who's in there or what injuries happened before this
mm,
class that I need to address and all of that. So constantly thinking on my feet, using my skills, being able to motivate, but also instruct and keep them safe, and how that has helped then the hosting side, where you have to be so in the present, be ready to ask a different question. Doesn't matter what you had planned because things might go differently. There could be things, falling off on the sides of the set. You got to keep going
yeah.
forward. Not everything's fine and, on camera. So
Yeah.
just like how everything does feed one another in life. And it's important to be aware of that, like you just said with coaching and podcasting.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that answer. My next question for you is this. What is the thing that has recently happened in your life that has created the greatest impact for you?
Well, I guess the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's so, I mean, talk about a
Mm,
general answer, but it's encompassed so much. I mean, it's all the awfulness is of course very obvious, and we all know that. And on the other side too, it's given time for me to actually work on projects that I've pushed
mm,
aside, because in pre-pandemic times, my life revolved around run here, teach a class, run here, train a client, run here to go to an audition, run here, run here, and here, and here.
mm,
And not having that devoted time to sit and, start to reach out to agents or casting directors to research my industry online and read the articles about what's happening, to actually sit and watch the television shows that I want to audition for. Like, cool, I need to know about my field. And I just feel like I got so lost in the running around the city that it didn't happen. So it was a forced slowdown
mm.
in that regard, but not a slowdown in regards of just learning and trying to be a sponge and taking everything in. And also finally then pursuing some of those additional projects. I mean, Be the Good, the podcast came out of this time. And I don't think that would have happened before. And it started as a split in the middle between, I want to highlight that there's still good in the world in this awful
Mm,
time, so that people have that moment of like lightness throughout all of the heaviness. And the other half was, I'm a host and I love interviewing people, but I didn't have any on camera recorded examples of me doing that. So I thought,
mm.
well, I can spread good news and get practice on this. And that's how
Yeah.
it started. And then it's grown to, by the time this airs, it'll probably be in episode 45 or 50, I think, by the time
Ooh.
this airs. So So that's really exciting. So,
Oh.
despite the awfulness, it's given a chance to learn so much, to read, to listen to interviews of experts, to create my own projects, to put more songs on camera, to take different dance classes because it was virtual and it was like a no pressure situation. And I found that, found some extra skills there. So, and even from a non-professional standpoint, to reconnect. I mean, not that you ever weren't connected, but it was that idea of finally reaching out to some people that I hadn't reached out to in far too long, not for any other reason than just life took me this way and that way. And to reconnect with some friends and family that I hadn't spoken to much in recent years. And that's been, oh, the most wonderful. So, and also to prove that my husband and I are really meant for each other because we have been in 600 square feet since March of 2020 and we still love each other.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that so, so much. And like what you said made a lot of sense, because since the pandemic started, for me, I felt like personally in my journey, it felt more like, like it was a curse, but it was also a blessing. It was a curse because my health anxiety was at peak. I lost my best friend and a lot of awful stuff happened. But it was also a blessing because I learned so much in this time, and every single thing, every single awful thing made me realize of how important life is and how important it is for me to do the thing that we are doing, creating impact like every single day, at least one small ripple. I keep saying this, like consistently make one small ripple, and that's all it takes to create that big wave. 1 month down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, you never know, but like that one small ripple is all it takes. So yeah, definitely pandemic has been a curse and a blessing. But yeah, I feel like I personally enjoyed your podcast so much because it was something that was so, so needed. Like
Thank you.
like you said, when I started this podcast, which again started in the pandemic, yeah, it was like, it was more about connecting and thinking about our own feelings and challenging those feelings, looking into those feelings and stuff like that. And while that is important, it is also important to love yourself and surround yourself with the good. So like I kept feeling that since we were on the podcast together, when I was on your podcast, I was like, this is such a great thing because it keeps me in balance. Like while I talk about stuff like this, I know that there's someone out there spreading the good news as well. So like it's both confronting and comforting. So I genuinely love that a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. And see, just like you said about my podcast, needed to hear that. Same with yours. Like you're
Mm.
diving into, what makes your soul and what makes you, happy in life and all of this. So again, yes, important. We need, as I say in my podcast tagline, we need all the good news we can get. So
Mm.
there you go. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Love that. So, my one last question to you is this: what is the one last thing that you would like to leave the listeners slash viewers of this podcast with?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ah, my brain is spinning with thoughts. I mean, what we just said, I think to highlight that, you actually said it, was the appreciating every moment.
Mm,
And I think that is really important because if that's the umbrella comment, what's under that, right? It's the appreciating the people in your lives, because as we saw with this pandemic, overnight you can be
mm,
perfectly healthy to not even with us, right?
yeah.
No matter if age, background, anything, it could happen. So appreciating those people and telling them, making the effort to, if you can only say hi for 5 minutes, say hi for those 5 minutes, right? Anything. Also under that umbrella of appreciating every moment is, are you doing something you love, right?
Mm,
If that's your career, that's your passion, wonderful. If you're in an industry that maybe you don't love that much, but
mm,
you don't really see how you can get out of it right now, well, what else can you do in your life that brings you joy, that brings you passion, to take the time to think about those things, to really sit with yourself and say, what brings me joy? Is it being the mother to your child? Is it being a volunteer usher at a theater? Is
Yeah.
it changing your whole career to do pro bono law? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, it's fill in the blank. It can span everything.
Yeah.
No thing is too big, too small, to anything. And appreciating the moments, because time flies. Oh my gosh, it just feels like it gets faster every year. And I know it's
Yeah.
not technically, but it sure feels like it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, all under that umbrella of appreciating every moment, for sure.
Mm, I love that. And I hear you with the time going faster every year, because when you were saying that, I was like, I just feel like it was this year the pandemic started, but like next year in 3 months' time, it will be 2 years since the pandemic. And I'm like, what world am I living in? Like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when the podcast comes out, it'll probably be right around 2 years
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is insane. I would say, people ask me like about something, and I'll be like, I can't honestly tell you if that was last week, last year, or a decade ago, because
Oh
I don't
gosh.
even know
Yes.
anymore.
Thank you. Because I feel like I'm the only one feeling that way. I'm like, I don't know when we last spoke, but we spoke, and I remember that. And that's all that matters. Like, don't ask me what time it
Yes.
is.
To bring it full circle, Madhurima, I
Yeah,
can still do the dances from Annie when I was
yeah,
13.
yeah.
Can't tell you what I did yesterday.
Would you like to demonstrate though? Like, would you like to like show us some moves or sing something? Sing a favorite 5-6 lines at the most of your favorite
Oh yeah,
thing right now.
A little Annie. But brother, you're never fully dressed without a smile. Doo-ba-doo, Charleston, Charleston, that's the dance step. You stand out a mile, but brother, you're never fully big hands without a smile.
I love that. I feel like that was the perfect way to end this podcast. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so
If
much.
you want the full choreography, call me.
I will. I will. You guys, you should too. It's so amazing. Seriously, such joy in being a part
Thank
of this podcast with
you.
you and having you here. Yeah.
Such an honor to be asked. I appreciate you having me here.
Yay! Thank you so much. Have fun, guys. Reach out to Kate, reach out to me. Again, links will be in the description. And you will probably meet an adorable ball of sunshine, if I do say so myself, at the other end.
Thank
So,
you.
yes, do reach out and have a good day.
Awesome. Thank you so much.